Well, thank y'all. Thank you. Look, why don't y'all come up? Why don't y'all come and join us? Seriously, I think this is important. I think especially to show Louisiana and the world how important this is. Because a lot of times we actually fail to explain to the people of this state how important and how impactful some of the things that we try to do here are. Is the press ready? We don't want to miss them. It's very important. It's a very important question. How are y'all good? Thumbs up? All right. Hey, Pipe, how are you? Good. All right. My fellow Louisianans, let me begin with this. I first want to thank the Attorney General for the work that she's been doing. We're going to bring her up, but in just a second after I make a few comments. But let me begin with this. This issue is not new to me. As Attorney General, lowering prescription drug costs by targeting those who profit rather than produce was a focus of mine, as well as now Attorney General Liz Murrill was, who now runs the Department of Justice. Together, we have been fighting for patients, pharmacists, and physicians, not for headlines, but for people and health. As your governor, I have vowed to continue this fight. I was introduced to PBMs as a newly minted congressman back in 2011. After a visit to my doctor for a sinus infection, I filled the prescription at a local pharmacy, only to get in the mail about a week later a letter informing me that I could switch pharmacies and receive a year's supply of the medication that the doctor had written to me. It was insulting, to say the least. I was flabbergasted. I called my doctor and I said, "You only wrote me a script with one refill, and I want to know how these people know that you wrote me a script and why they are interfering in what pharmacy I want to use." But if you read the fine print, you realize that what they tell you is that they're trying to save you money, but they're not interested in saving you money. They're interested in increasing profits by monopolizing the market, preying on our local pharmacies, and trying to increase a magic word called market share. Now, what PBMs are doing is nothing new. Let me explain to you. There was a time in this country under which gasoline prices had gotten out of control because major oil companies had become vertically integrated. They had owned the wells, the production, the pipelines, the refineries, and began to put gasoline stations out, squeezing the mom and pops off of Main Street. In response, Congress intervened by declaring that such vertical integration in the gasoline marketing business was an unfair trade practice, and that no entity should have the power to control both ends of the supply chain. Since that time, I think the gasoline market serves us well. In fact, if you go around, you can compete to where you want to fill your tank up. In fact, there can be two prices on both corners, on opposite corners on the street. But if you fast forward to what's happening today and look at what PBMs are doing, they manage your prescription drug plan. They own the mail order pharmacy. They actually decide what your doctor prescribes to you. I did not know that these folks have a license to practice medicine. And then they force you to use the pharmacy they secretly own, leaving your neighborhood pharmacists to wither on the vine. They re-prescribe, they redirect, and their service is so inefficient, they pile administrative processes and paperwork on our doctors and other pharmacies. And all of this to direct and control the market share on drugs. And I've yet to have anyone show me how these PBMs have lowered prescription drugs. This is an abusive model. It's just as abusive as the one I spoke about earlier. Although this time it's not gasoline, it's your medicine. PBMs are not healthcare providers. They are corporate profiteers inserted into the most intimate part of your life and your health. They do not make a product. They only make a profit. They claim to exist to lower the prices of prescription drugs, yet as I said earlier, the price only increases. They are not negotiating to lower your costs. They are negotiating to increase their profits quarter after quarter, so their stock goes up. They use spread pricing to charge your health plan one amount and reimburse these pharmacists pennies on the dollar. They data mine your confidential health data and use it to market and steer you to their own pharmacies. They override doctors, block drugs, deny care, and delay treatment, all while pretending they're doing it to manage your benefits. What's worse is that when those like myself and General Murrill and Governor Huckabee, who are brave enough to call them out, they unleash every sort of vile lobbying effort known to man. While we have passed legislation to ban spread pricing, outlaw patient steering, prohibit the use of personal health data for marketing or redirection, and protect the doctor-patient relationship, we've made it unmistakably clear that the prescription pad belongs to our doctors, not to PBMs, and certainly not in their boardroom. Which brings us to why we are here today. I believe, like Governor Huckabee did, and others, that we need to prohibit PBMs from owning and operating pharmacies. Just like Congress prohibited all companies from owning the gas pump, we should ban PBMs from monopolizing so that they own the drug counter. When you let middlemen control everything, it's not a free market. It's a rigged market. And when your access to medicine is dictated by profit motives, unfortunately, the only people are we that suffer. So as we try to dismantle this racket and move legislation that was successful in Arkansas to prohibit vertical integration, CVS decided to use your customer data, if you are a member or if you are a patient of CVS, in breach of their fiduciary duty to push a political message. And what you were exposed to was the full display of power that CVS thinks it can use over its customers. CVS abused customers' sensitive information to push a political message. Because as we work to educate legislators on why vertical integration did nothing to lower prescription drugs, a text went out. And how do I know it? Because the First Lady received one. and she was not happy. It came on the same text chain under which CVS would identify for her that her prescriptions were ready. Now, CVS can claim that they didn't use her data, but they're certainly using the same text service on the same text chain. How could they use her personal data to push a political message was the question she asked me as we were working to educate legislators on vertical integration. And I also believe that it was the sentiment felt by many people around the state of Louisiana. Sending out this mass text message filled with propaganda is both unethical and manipulative. And this state will not be bullied. I asked the Attorney General to investigate this matter immediately. Because you see, some of the contracts that CVS has specifically prohibit them from exploiting prescription drug information obtained from beneficiaries in order to achieve monetary gain or economic power over their beneficiaries, pharmacists, and pharmacies that is in their contractual obligations. With that, I would like to bring up the Attorney General to announce the results of the investigation that she put forth and the actions that she intends to take. General Murrill.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Landry. I'm Attorney General Liz Murrill. On June 12th, my office sent a cease and desist letter out to CVS after thousands of Louisianans received a text message about a bill that was moving through the legislature. Today, I'm announcing that 3 new lawsuits are being filed against CVS Healthcare Corporation, Caremark PCS Health LLC, and all of their affiliated entities. Those lawsuits predominantly relate to violations of the Unfair Trade Practices Act. One of them specifically covers the vertical integration issue that Governor Landry discussed. It's my belief that CVS did use customer information for the reason that we, including me, received text messages from CVS on the same text chain that we receive prescription information, flu shot information, and other information related to your health care. They used our information to lobby for their own corporate interests and to scare people into lobbying on their behalf. At least 1 or 2 of those text messages that I saw that came directly to me threatened seniors, veterans, and people with serious healthcare conditions and said that you might not be able to get your medication, or if you do, you may have to pay more. All of those things were deceptive, in my opinion, and certainly misleading. PBMs are not managing the cost of drugs. They are driving the price up. And we've had a lot of discussion about some of the reasons why. And if you want to look at the lawsuits, they will be available on my website or through my press office. They detail in great length all of the ways that these manipulative tactics are used to drive our prices up and to drive the independent pharmacists out of business. So one of the lawsuits relates to the text messages. One of the lawsuits relates to vertical integration and violations of our antitrust laws and the Unfair Trade Practices Act. And one of the lawsuits relates to the violations of state law and the Unfair Trade Practices Act related to the way that they have tried to run independent pharmacists out of the market. Since 2022, we've had over 100 independent pharmacies close. Those numbers continue to rise because of the tactics that are used to drive them out of business. CVS has, in my opinion, and as we've outlined in the lawsuit, deliberately avoided compliance with Title II restrictions, Title 22 restrictions in the insurance code that prohibit them from undercutting the prices that they have to pay when they acquire a drug. There's a new bill that's recently been signed by the governor that will also further those restrictions, will further create transparency in their practices and reinforce the the restrictions that already exist against effective rate pricing and other clawbacks and ways that the independent pharmacists are undercut. That's HB 264, which I believe has been or is about to be signed. Mike Eccles, where's Mike?
Right here. Right here.
That is Mike's bill, and Mike's been a leader in this area for several years. It's taken some time, I think, to understand how all of these pricing mechanisms work. That's not our fault. It's because all of the contracts have confidential information. Even the pharmacists sometimes can't get the full contract that they're required to sign. That is unfair. It is deceptive, and I believe in Louisiana, it's illegal. So we're going to make sure that those kind of practices stop. We are going to enforce Louisiana law that protects our independent pharmacists. If you've ever seen a map of the independent pharmacists around our state and you see what that map looks like without them, that's when you will see healthcare deserts around our state with pharmacy care. It's a shocking map. I've asked Randall Johnson to make sure that that map is available on their association website so that you can see what it looks like when we lose their services. And these are the people who care about us. They are in their stores every day. They live in our communities, and they are engaged in making sure that our health care is protected. CVS hasn't done that. In fact, they used our personal information against us. So if you have any questions specifically about the lawsuits, I'm happy to answer those. They will all be available on our website.
Before we take questions, I'd like to just say, point out one other thing. Here in Louisiana, we're no stranger to natural disasters, right? And we are no strangers to having to evacuate our homes. And leave a lot of personal things behind. And sometimes we come back and there's not a lot left. I will let you ponder on this. If you receive your medication from a mail order pharmacist and you have to evacuate, and you have to go and try to hunt down that mail order pharmacist to then try to send you your drugs at wherever you move to, you know how difficult that is? Please press 1, please press 2, please press 3. Oh, the information you told me you're at is not where you live. Yes, I don't have a home anymore. That is why the people standing next to us are so important. Today is a day that the people of Louisiana say that enough is enough. That we choose Main Street instead of Wall Street. And with that, we'll be happy to take any questions. Just like.
Governor, you promised to call the legislature back into a special session on this issue. Is that still your intention?
We are convening a group of some of the best and brightest regarding PBMs and vertical integration. We are, and working with the Attorney General, going to go back through all of our statutes and determine whether or not we could exercise the authority unilaterally. But if we can't, then certainly we intend to bring the legislature in so that we can put the laws in place to protect our people.
Would that involve a special session or coming back next year as regular?
As soon as I find out when I can act, we'll act. I also wanted to, I know that Senator Cloud is here and Dixon McMakin is here. These two legislators have been doing a tremendous amount on this issue as well. Yes, ma'am.
You just said that you're looking into possibly acting unilaterally with respect to pharmacy benefit managers and state statute. Can you say a little bit more about what you mean when you say unilaterally?
Well, we're trying to determine whether or not we can act from the executive position, rather than needing, whether or not the laws that are on the books are actually sufficient to be able to enforce some control over these PBMs, or whether additional laws are necessary. Yes, sir.
It says here in the press release that the state is seeking both injunctive relief and restitution. What would restitution look like in this country?
That's just general language that we put in every lawsuit, but restitution would be related to any kind of specific damages that we incur in the investigation of the lawsuits and related to their practices. We've lost pharmacies around our state, and we've had to come in and surround those areas with additional services. Sometimes that even costs us more money. So, whatever we can justify, we're going to seek. We also have penalties and attorney's fees under the unfair trade practice statute. Dion?
Dion Gilder, WAFB. So you briefly mentioned the ECHO's bill. Can you explain what's in it and the changes and how enforcement is going to work?
Yeah, so Randall Johnson with the Independent Pharmacist Association can explain a lot of the details of that legislation. I can tell you that generally it provides a lot of transparency around pricing. It also has some very strong protections for the independent pharmacists against some of the practices that we outline in the lawsuit, like clawbacks, rebate manipulation, the kind of contracting that they do to undercut their prices and what they have to actually pay for the drug. We have a statute now. I mean, we already had a statute that prohibited that. I have some express authority under this particular statute under Title 22 to enforce it under Title 51, which is the Unfair Trade Practices Act.
Thank you, General Governor. Thank you very much for being here today and those questions. This law that has been signed by the governor is being signed by the governor. House Bill 264 brings added transparency toward the goals that these pharmacists have, which is that the patient find access to necessary prescription drugs from their choice of pharmacy, and that pharmacy be able to fill that prescription because we have the laws being enforced, the laws that we passed, the laws that prohibit steering, telling a patient that you can't use your local pharmacy, you can't use a pharmacy close by, that you have to go out of state, out of town to mail order. We also face with effective rate pricing where they pay a pharmacy and then reduce the amount they pay to the pharmacy after that prescription has left, and driving that pharmacist to where they are not being reimbursed to cover their cost. The pharmacists have only asked to have their cost reimbursed, their cost of acquiring and dispensing the drug. And we have passed those laws overwhelmingly by our legislature. This piece, which has passed with no nay votes in our Louisiana legislature and is being signed by the governor, offers the added enforcement of laws which have been on the books and we have not seen enforced until this time.
Yes, ma'am.
Jasmine Dean with KLFY. Last week, a class action lawsuit was filed with the CVS Care Mart. How are these three lawsuits similar or different from the class action lawsuit that was filed?
So that lawsuit was filed on behalf of individuals, and our lawsuit is filed on behalf of the state. So my authority under Title 51 is different from that of an individual attorney who's representing individual plaintiffs.
Rachel Hanley, looking at well, CVS has told multiple news outlets that if it was closing and being structured in this way, it would have to close 100 pharmacies across the state. Does the state have any kind of plan for relief or stopgap solution if that does happen?
Well, that's an interesting, and it's a great question. In fact, it was interesting to see the article that the Advocate wrote, where they interviewed a number of people exiting a CVS and asked them if they were concerned whether that CVS closed, and none of them seemed to care. I will also tell you that I can make maps available to you all that show you the number of pharmacies in Louisiana in addition to CVS's. I have not been able to find a place where there is a CVS and there isn't additional pharmacies in close proximity to that CVS. I feel very confident that the market can handle the closure of CVS if that's what they determine to do. However, we are not going to allow companies to come in here and prey on our Main Street pharmacies. That's the problem. That's where we are here. That's called monopolistic practices. There are laws against that. Yes, ma'am.
Alexis Mary, WURZ. If I remember correctly, this bill didn't initially include PBMs in it. So I'm curious, at what point was that, because I think it was tacked on in conference committee, if I remember correctly. But also, I mean, yeah, we decided at what point that was decided. So what, if there's more than
So it actually was always a transparency bill around PBMs. So from the very beginning in the insurance committee, we had PBMs included in this to show some of their unfair trade practices. Now, the bill did grow as it moved to the Senate. It passed unanimously out of the House, went to the Senate, and they added more transparency measures. We upgraded the measures where the Attorney General has more oversight and can, hold them accountable for certain things. And there were 4 or 5 more provisions. When you look at the whole bill, we banned spread pricing. We put a lot of rebate reform. Like right now, PBMs collude with health plans and they keep hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. They turn around and rip off these guys by holding their money or pulling their money back through clawbacks. It's an extraordinarily large unfair trade practice, and it's only gotten worse over the last 2 decades. I've been able to work with the pharmacists and independent pharmacies over the last couple of years to pass small bits of legislation to protect the Office of Group Benefits. This is a large piece of legislation that over the next 24 to 36 months will broaden the authority of the AG, will broaden the authority of government to see what these unfair trade practices are and these untransparent practices that are happening. And I think at the end of the day, they've been out there messaging, and CVS is one of the bad guys. There are other ones that are out there that have done these exact same practices. That CVS is not alone. I think that at the end of the day, when we get 3 years down the road, it will lower prescription drug prices, increase transparency, and actually increase access. You got to remember, 10 years ago, there were more independent pharmacists in this room. CVS has put them out of business by manipulating pricing, and that has to stop.
Yeah, I want to just point out that I also have existing lawsuits against Optum Rx and Express Scripts for the same kind of conduct. So we now have lawsuits pending against about I think there's only one other one right now that we do not have a lawsuit pending against, and we're looking at that one too. But those 3 that we've sued account for about 80% of the pharmacy market. So this conduct is pervasive. It is across the PBM market. And when CVS declares that it would have to close 100 pharmacies, I will tell you that they've already closed 100 pharmacies. It was theirs.
Sure.
Thank you, Governor. I know you mentioned Governor Sanders a couple of times, and I'm just wondering if you talked to her about the proposal that didn't end up passing related to banning ownership of pharmacies by PBMs. Have you been in touch with her about that and the lawsuit that her state is party to?
Oh, I spoke to her the day that they passed the bill, and she put the Instagram post out. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. This is what we need to do here in Louisiana. I called her and congratulated her about it. And what she told me was what to expect if we went after the vertical integration model. She told me that they had spent in excess of $1.5 million against the governor of Arkansas because she simply wanted to lower prescription drugs in Arkansas and cared for the people of Arkansas. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it's only the second time that amount of money had poured into the state of Arkansas to lobby against a particular initiative. So she had told me to be on the lookout that if we were going to attack or dismantle the vertical integration model, to be prepared for that type of lobbying.
And I hope I can get one more question in for AG Murrill. You mentioned evidence that you believe that the text messages violated state unfair trade practices statutes. Can you just say a little bit more about the evidence that your investigation found related to that?
Well, I received a number of complaints the first day that the text messages started to go out, including one from the governor and the first lady. Also received the text messages myself so I could see for myself what the messages were saying. We sent a cease and desist letter out on June 12th. CVS responded to that fairly quickly, reached out and indicated that they claimed that they did not use customer information for those text messages. But I received them on the same text chain as the messages that I receive about my prescriptions. So I find it hard to understand how they weren't using the same information to release those text messages since they all came. I mean, one says, you've got a prescription waiting and your flu shot, you can get your flu shot here. And then the other one says, oh my God, veterans, seniors, and people with chronic or serious health conditions, you might have to pay more for your drugs and you might not be able to get your prescriptions filled. So it's all on the same chain. And I think that is some pretty serious evidence that they were using customer information for it.
Okay, well, thank you so very much. We appreciate the local pharmacists that are here today, and we will be updating the press as I'm sure the Attorney General is, as the suits move through, and we will let the press know as we make our way towards whether or not we can take unilateral action or we need legislative action. Thank you so much.